So basically, the situation is this. The Atlantic is releasing a film called White Noise, which is about the white nationalist movement, okay? And the Atlantic released an article the other day about Lauren Southern. It was quite critical of her. Well, I'd say it was kind of critical of her. It was more critical of like the alt-right movement. And it made some pretty astonishing accusations. For example, it claimed that Gavin McInnes has been like chasing Lauren Southern, trying to, get in her knickers, get in her underwear. And also just generally explaining and laying out how the alt-right is shockingly, absolutely flooded with misogyny and the way that Lauren Southern was treated throughout much of her time kind of operating within that space. There's probably, by the time this comes out on YouTube, I think it will come out on YouTube, there should be another YouTube video about this, which I should probably link below. But basically, at the end of that segment, someone said, hey, Lauren Southern's actually responded to the accusations that are made, but I'd already gone through this massive article, so I said, okay, I'll do it on another stream. So here we are. We're on another article, this one by Lauren Southern, and this is her response to that article that I just explained. So let's go over it. Let's see what's being said, okay? So it's titled, Just Promise Not to Tell the Atlantic. If I were the type of person Daniel Lombroso makes me out to be in his Atlantic article, I would have one thing to say to him. Thank you. Thank you for platforming me. In fact, if I were the type of person Daniel Lombroso pretends I am in his article, I think there would be very real questions about the ethics of giving me more exposure to me, even when that exposure takes the form of a tacky gossip column level bit of slime, which has the audacity to masquerade as political profundity. Ooh, coming in sharp. We're starting off spicy, people, okay? Lauren Southern is not mincing her words here. What's more, if I were the type of person Daniel Lombroso pretends I am, I would be almost perversely encouraged by his article. What Daniel shows us is that no matter how horrible he thinks you are, you can get right back on the air the instant a desperate left-wing journalist like him needs clicks. The ethics and consistency of his own politics be damned. Is it just me, or is she like just kind of like dunking on the journalist here? Fortunately for Daniel, and unfortunately for his readers, I'm not that kind of person. Fortunately for Daniel, I was and am too kind, too naive, and too trusting. Unfortunately for Daniel's readers and for his publisher, the fact of my being too kind, too naive, and too trusting enabled Daniel to behave in ways towards his source that no journalist would ever permit. Because as you will soon see, platforming me is the least of Daniel's worries when it comes to ethics. Let me count the number of things Daniel did that asked me not to tell the Atlantic. Daniel would hate for anyone to know this, but we were good friends. Of course, he got nervous about it sometimes, and when I would mention it over drinks and say, Daniel, despite your job, you know we're great friends, he would slyly remark, oh, Lauren, you know I can't say that, I'm still a journalist. I'll give him that. He did always include the cheeky remark after we just spent a night out discussing absolutely nothing to do with his stories or politics. Oh yes, the nights out, every time I paid for Daniel's drinks, made him breakfasts or dinners, I'd hear that constant line, just make sure not to tell the Atlantic, Lauren. When he came over for dinner with my mum and dad and said they were some of the nicest people he'd ever met, I got that line again, just don't tell the Atlantic. I got texts from him asking me to say hello to them and send his well wishes. When I spoke to Daniel and consoled him through his breakup, I got that same line, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I really appreciate you talking me through this and your kindness, Lauren. Oh, and it didn't only go one way. Daniel was one of the kindest men I knew. In fact, he held me as I sobbed into his arms after one particularly difficult week and consoled me, telling me I was going to be okay. What I saw in his genuine kindness, I now see as something far more distasteful. A man preying on the vulnerability of an emotionally shattered 22-year-old. In other words, it was the sort of power differential that the feminists of Me Too have trained everyone to view with suspicion. Which is ironic, because rather than using his position of power to try to get me to sleep with him, Daniel instead used it to try to get me to lie about other people trying to sleep with me. Specifically, he was trying to get me to talk about an incident that I otherwise would have kept private involving the right-wing pundit Gavin McInnes. To make a long story short, Gavin got flirty and a little forward with me on multiple occasions. I wasn't interested or particularly impressed. Gavin took no for an answer. End of story. Gavin got flirty and a little forward with me on multiple occasions. Gavin took no for an answer. Isn't that a contradiction? Is that not a bit of a contradiction? I don't know. Like, how can you on the one hand say someone took no for an answer? But then on the other hand, you're there going, oh, well, you know, he was multiple times coming on to me. But not for Daniel. He kept obsessively trying to get me to give him more details about what Gavin had said and done. He would stroke my arm and pretend to be concerned for my welfare, all while subtly pumping me for information on what, as I would come to learn, he regarded as a juicy potential Me Too scoop. I'm trying to figure out what to think about this. Like, I don't know. This seems like a hit piece on the journalist, but then, of course, journalists aren't a human, right? Like, journalists aren't perfect paragons of action. I don't know. This is a bit... I'm trying to figure this out. I thought I knew the difference between feminism and voyeurism. Apparently I was wrong. Daniel spent the next 2 years trying to get me to tell this story on record. Even though Gavin's behaviour toward me was certainly not my worst experience and I didn't feel assaulted or like a Me Too style victim. It became fairly obvious Daniel didn't actually care about my feelings, so despite my repeated protestations that I did not want to attack Gavin, he would sneak a question in to try and make me talk about him during every interview we did. He even had one of the women at The Atlantic call me to try to convince me to do a Me Too story with The Atlantic against McInnes. This went on for 2 years, and for 2 years I refused. Daniel's pushes continued to escalate. He told me he had secretly recorded private conversations I had in the car with Gavin. Now please understand, I would never knowingly have a conversation like that in front of anyone. I don't regard it as good form to expose people's personal failures or struggles. That's for them and their family to sort out, not for the Colosseum of the media. Gavin's behaviour to me, however disrespectful it was to his wife and kids, was not the business of the vultures that make up the court of public opinion. It was between him, his wife, his God, and himself. However, despite Gavin knowing I was in the car with Lombroso, he ignored the fact that a journalist was within earshot and barreled on. I tried to end the call diplomatically and to keep it as vague as possible, but clearly Daniel was able to record enough to make the nature of the conversation crystal clear. Still, despite his having violated my privacy with a secret recording, exactly what he'd sworn he would never do when we first met, I ignored it and continued trusting him. I am sure I'm not the only woman to let this kind of minor gaslighting slide. This all came to a head when Daniel decided to move from covert surveillance to outright threats. This June, Daniel tried to call me one last time, asking again for me to give him a quote saying Gavin McInnes assaulted me. I said no. I didn't feel assaulted. Gavin had respected my boundaries. Why would I need to give him a quote? And like all good abusers, that was when Daniel's seamless imitation of a nice guy vanished in a puff of sleaze. Lauren, if you don't give me a quote, then it will appear to the public like you slept with Gavin that night, he told me with audible frustration. He knew damn well that I'd never done this, but the implication was clear. Give me a quote or make you look like a slut. It was blackmail, the carrot had failed, and Daniel had grabbed the stick. It is wrong to coerce sex from women for pleasure. It is just as wrong to coerce women to manufacture sexual trauma for clicks. And this is exactly the sort of media nonsense that makes people question genuine victims when they speak out about their trauma. I had crazy people in my nutjob email folder who were angry because I wouldn't put out for them physically. Daniel was angry I wouldn't put out for him emotionally. Apparently that's the only line between a feminist and an incel. Whether they claim to own your contents of your ovaries or the contents of your heart. Daniel does not own either. He does not own me. No means no, Daniel. Not that you ever listen to that. I'm telling you this not just because it hurt me, but because you deserve to know in this whole sordid exercise he didn't just betray me, he betrayed himself. How long is this anyway? Okay, we'll go. Okay. Oh God. Okay, we'll get there. Okay. I know what you're probably thinking. Lauren, why the hell did you trust a journalist in the first place? Believe me, I asked myself that many times in the last year. I was sipping some serious stupid juice. Actually, to understand why I trust a journalist, you have to understand the entire pitch Daniel gave me in early 2017. I was in Washington, D.C., and he took me for lunch at a steakhouse across from the Washington Monument and sweet-talked me for a good couple of hours. He'd been pitching the idea of including me in a documentary for the last year or so. I'd already rejected him for months at this point, just telling him I didn't trust the press. Good thinking, Lauren. You should have stuck with your gut. He continued pressing, telling me, listen, Lauren, the hit pieces about you and other right-wingers making you appear as villains have already been done. The Atlantic isn't interested in doing some cartoonish approach to conservatives. That's for less serious outlets like BuzzFeed or Slate, websites he mocked routinely as nonsense news, clickbait and essentially bullshit. He always would imply that he was above them. Brave words for a man who essentially wrote an article that should have been titled Top 5 Craziest Men Lauren Southern Ever Dated. Number 3 will shock you. It was a funny read if anything, but also nonsense, clickbait and essentially bullshit. Okay. Mucho Texto. Can we get some Mucho Textos in chat? I feel like we need that as an emote. Back to his pitch though, he was right. Even at the time, hit pieces on the alt-right were getting old. And certainly by 2020, when this was finally published, the term alt-right is full on geriatric. No one cares anymore, they're not relevant. So what did he want with my, at the time, 21-year-old self? Well, apparently the Atlantic wanted to understand why people are actually on the right. They wanted to know the human side of the story. He told me this was going to be the defining movie on the right wing. And at this point, all they had was Richard Spencer to be in it, and he didn't think that summed up all conservatives. Which is right, especially considering Spencer himself isn't a conservative. They wanted someone who was closer to the regular right-wing experience, someone more moderate. I finally agreed. I said okay, but this better be what you say it is, no nonsense. No nonsense, Daniel assured me. There wasn't going to be any slander, no deceptive editing, no secret recording. Everything in this documentary was genuine, and anything I wasn't comfortable with, I didn't have to do or talk about. I was okay with this. If I could go back in time and slap myself, I would. Yeah, this is getting a bit spicy. What's going on? Where were we? Sorry. It's no Mills and Boone. Was I here? My cardinal element was not thinking jealous or trustworthy. It was thinking they were smart. I didn't count on them being so unthinkably dense. If anything, I thought they were too smart. Okay, I think I'm here, aren't I? I've just got... I'm very confused. And boy, did this move ever bomb. They submitted it to almost every single film festival in the United States and overseas. It was continually rejected. He had high dreams of premiering at Sundance and kept discussing that he was in negotiations with Netflix. He eventually got into one of the small documentary festivals that I'd never heard of in my life, nor had I heard of any documentaries featured in it. And after trying to sell to Netflix and various other websites and channels, they eventually went straight for pay-per-view. Pay-per-view that every single person can put their movie on. No one wanted to buy it. This is Lauren Southern. It's about Lauren Southern. It should be the stream title. On top of this, Daniel lost his job. The Atlantic, the outlet for the working man, had laid off a large number of staff in order to save some cash. Very progressive. And this is where Daniel and I's friendship ended. Once again, he will try to deny that we were ever friends. No, don't worry, it's all good. But how many monsters that you genuinely believe are neo-Nazis do you spend hours over the evening chatting with about your breakups? How many monsters do you talk about your favourite day spas in New York with while exchanging suggestions? How many monsters do you chat about playing Legend of Zelda in quarantine with and heart react their suggestions to download Animal Crossing's next? Though to be fair to Daniel, Animal Crossing would be a great match for his style of journalism in that it's 80% fishing. I mean, he's He's a journalist that's like embedded covering this stuff. I mean, it's a bit like an undercover... I guess it's a bit like an undercover person, right? Like, you've got to engage in a certain amount of... I don't know, it's just a bit weird. It's a bit weird that, like, it doesn't really seem like many of the facts are being disputed. It's just about the character of the journalist. Right? Right? I know I may sound a bit bitter here, and perhaps I am. I never imagined I would be writing something like this about Daniel Lombroso, because to be honest, I think Daniel was genuine. I think he genuinely enjoyed my company, enjoyed me as a person, and was a friend. In fact, I know he did, for as long as he had a job. But as Bertolt Brecht's Threepenny Opera tells us, first feed the face, and then talk right and wrong. The failure of Daniel's documentary and the loss of his job made him unable to feed the face, and as a result, his true face emerged. There is nothing more dangerous than a desperate man with nothing to lose. In fact, as I was soon to learn, the only thing more dangerous than what Daniel calls one young person with a knack for social media is another young person with no knack for filmmaking staring down the barrel of exposure. Daniel's original project was the stuff that good filmmaking can be made of. It would have been risky, daring, original. It would have humanised where other people's first instinct was to vilify. In fact, many of those people are still angry at Daniel for not vilifying his subjects enough. The only thing certain leftists love more than talking about the boundless capacity for empathy is the thrill of denying that empathy to people who challenge them. Daniel knew that by humanising these people's enemies, he would be lumped in with them, and he didn't have the balls to be a second Cassie J. So instead, he betrayed not just me, but his own artistic integrity by producing the exact kind of clickbait bullshit that he mocked BuzzFeed for creating. Yeah, I mean, what tangible facts are being disputed? It's essentially just criticising the conduct of the journalist, which, sure, yeah, okay, but like, I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we'll get to that? I don't know. Daniel Bad. Yeah, it's just like a hit piece. But unfortunately for him, where the market for humanising betrayals of social pariahs was too dangerous, the market for clickbait denunciations of these social pariahs are too saturated. So what's a documentarian of barely existent talent and non-existent balls to do? Turn to sensationalism. Libel and mock those who with more integrity and more courage than you. Release prurient personal details of no political relevance and hardly any honesty under the cover of high-handed moralism. Look at all the weirdos Lauren Southern dated. Do we know when Lauren got pregnant? Isn't it a sign of how toxic made our politics that I had to talk about this? And gossip or something there. This alone would be bad enough, flagrantly disrespecting a source and repeating every single thing that you promised that source would be off the record would be a death sentence for most journalists, even if the quotes were accurate. But Daniel apparently is not content with that ethical violation because he compounded it by flat out lying about things. I said, for instance, when the fact checker from The Atlantic called me illegally, she asked me about a quote where I supposedly said, "I guess I'm a hypocrite for marrying my husband." I have never said anything like this and asked her where she got that quote. She said Daniel had linked an audio file. She then proceeded to listen to that audio file and discover that not only had I said nothing of the kind, but the conversation never even mentioned my husband or my family. To her credit, she apologised and said she would fix it. Daniel has a serious fixation with trying to attack my family to the point of trying to inaccurately guesstimate my pregnancy and marriage dates. In reality, he has no idea. I don't know how this ever went to publication. Okay. As a professed descendant of Holocaust survivors, Daniel should know the dangers of using big lies to damn popular scapegoats. And if not, you would think The Atlantic would be more careful. Sadly, his expectation that he would get away with this lie makes total sense when you consider the litany of other misrepresentations and flat-out fabrications that litter his article. Yeah, all I remember of the family is that one boy. Well, I remember Obviously, the journalist spoke a lot about, mentioned a lot in the article about this boyfriend that wouldn't eat certain things, right? She cheated on her husband. Did I don't think it's no. I don't know. It doesn't. Yeah, it seems odd to go on about like I don't know. As professed descendant of Holocaust survivors, Daniel should know the dangers of using big lies to damn popular scapegoats. And if not, you would think the Atlantic would be more careful. Sadly, his expectation that he would get away with that lie makes total sense when you consider the litany of other misrepresentations and flat-out fabrications that litter his article. Okay, now we're getting to the fabrications. Okay. Okay, so apparently this is wrong. Let's read this. To give one particularly hilarious example, Daniel claims to have an in-depth knowledge of my personal life and cites having dated a Croatian neo-Nazi. In actuality, he's misremembering a conversation where I told him I had dated a Croatian and then jokingly mentioned the Croatians had been on the side of the Nazis, a form of self-depreciation about my reputation. But the man I was dating was not a Nazi, even if he was Croatian. I know they probably all look the same to Daniel, but blaming an entire nationality for the actions of one subset is still wrong. What next? Will Daniel accuse me of marrying a communist because my husband is part Asian? Or to show you an area where he so badly misstates the truth that it might as well be a lie, consider his story about meeting me at a chateau an hour outside of Paris, which she'd booked to recharge while her crew was off shooting around Europe. In reality, the only reason I booked the chateau was because Daniel suggested it as the most affordable option. For context, when I was filming Borderless, it became prohibitively expensive to find hotels in Paris during our shooting schedule. Daniel told me that the Atlantic team had holed up at a chateau an hour outside of Paris at much more affordable rates than Parisian hotels and offered to arrange for us to stay with them. I was grateful and accepted. I still had to spend about an hour every morning on a commute to scope out migrant locations in Paris, but it was a far more reasonable financial commitment than the absurdly priced hotel rooms I would have otherwise had to book. Daniel transmorgifies this into a tale of me booking that chateau as an extravagant waste of my subscribers' money, presumably so I could lounge and cackle like the Bond villain he's turned me into. Thanks for the proceeds from her work, Southern could afford this retreat in the French countryside, Daniel sniffs. I assure you it was not a retreat, I only took it because it was truly the cheapest alternative on offer. It's too bad that Daniel, apparently having realised his talents will make sure he never sees the inside of a chateau again, has decided to live instead in this flimsy journalistic house of cards he's constructed. This is one example of many that for the sake of the Atlantic's damaged integrity, I'm hoping they edit along with a list of other clearly false statements in the article that I have sent them. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, Vass, yeah, the truth is probably somewhere in between. Yeah, that's probably the best way of putting it. Like, I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say that the article that we read of Lauren Southern's, it's possible that some of the details may have been exaggerated. Yeah, like I think that's a pretty fair, unremarkable, and uncontroversial statement to make. But like, it's kind of inconsequential to the broader story. You know, like the fact she's trying to deny, like Gavin McInnes clearly made a number of unwanted advances to Lauren Southern, and whilst it may have been exaggerated a bit, I feel that was fairly reasonably represented in the article. And she's sort of like trying to like play it like it was like this big, I don't know. I think that like, I think this is going to be partly damage control. Some of it just seems a bit hit piecey, you know. Like we're saying, I think the truth may be somewhere in between all this stuff. I guess, I don't know. I definitely don't think her characterization of Daniel thinks all Croatians are Nazis is accurate. Well, yeah, of course. Like, she's just over egging the pudding a bit there. Yeah. These might seem like petty little instances of journalistic malfeasance to you, and by some lights, I suppose they are. I mean, she said it there. She said it there. But Daniel and his ilk run a grift that relies on the notion that they're brave opponents of authoritarianism, of fascism, of intolerance. They cast themselves as truth-tellers, opposing ideologically biased disinformation. Whatever garbled nonsense he spews in public, he knows that I also loathe authoritarianism, fascism and intolerance, and the truth matters more to me than any ideological spin. Lauren Southern. The truth matters more to me than any ideological spin. You can't fucking make it up, can you? You can't fucking make this shit up. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you joking? This is Lauren Southern we're talking about. Like, what the fuck? The point in rehearsing his many, many sins against journalism is not merely to embarrass him personally, but to make a significant and important point, that in judging the professed opponents of authoritarianism and supporters of truth, you must consider what their methods say about them. Daniel emotionally blackmailed a 22-year-old girl at her most vulnerable moments. He threatened her with sexual shaming if she wouldn't cook up a story about his political enemies. He lied about what she'd said and what she'd done for professional advancement, and when that advancement failed to materialise, he revealed intimate secrets for a friendship for the sake of a few arid days at the top of the clickbait pyramid. If this is what opposition to fascist ideological disinformation looks like, then I'm sorry to say the call is coming from inside the house. Anyways, if you thought this was going to get rid of me, if you thought it would demoralise me, all you've done is inspire me. You've made me more ruthless. You've built me up and helped me to learn a very important lesson about sociopaths in politics. I'm glad I learned it young. I will help in my long years of creating content ahead of me. Creation that I hope you know you have directly inspired and invigorated a fierce need in me to counter these lies of your works in the mainstream. My new documentary, Crossfire, will be out soon, and I'm proud to say I have not misquoted a single person in it. I leaned on honesty, integrity and genuine journalism to create a fantastic movie. I wish that were true of everyone working in this space. Those are not my damn blinds in the photo, nor is that my house. The photo is the real crime here, atrocious. That's quite a funny little ending. Daniel made me become I mean, what do I think about that? It just comes across very hit PC. That's all I can say about it, really. Were there maybe some embellishments? Were there maybe a couple of inaccuracies? Sure. But I don't really feel like the crux of the article has been debunked, you know? And the fact that it's relying on, this chateau was like mistold. Oh, okay. She got kicked from Australian CPAC. Oh yeah, I heard about this. But yeah, it's Look at this. People are just in a replies giving that shit. That's bad. That's bad. Come on. Be nice. I'm confused. If Lombroso tried to coerce you into giving a statement by saying he would make it look like you slept with McInnes if you refused to do so, why would he write in the article that you rebuffed McInnes and would not consider sleeping with a married man? Why would he even need a statement from you if you had the footage of what happened? Obviously, I understand you feel betrayed at being filmed in secret, but a lot of investigative journalists do this. I mean, yeah. I do. I think the original article is quite empathetic towards Lauren Southern. Hey, thanks so much for the advert bits. I really appreciate it. Okay, really, really appreciate that. Imagine being too toxic for Australian Conservatives. Well, yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of like he said. You know that, you know the phrase, "He said, she said." Yeah, have you heard of that before? I don't know if is that in America. I think it probably is. But it's basically Lauren's word against a journalist's word, essentially. Like, it's. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't really trust Lauren Southern. Like, I just don't trust Lauren Southern because of what she's done in the past. You know, she hasn't done much to really garner a much good faith from me. Hearsay. Yeah, hearsay. Like, I don't know. I mean, I've got no reason to really trust the journalist either. And I'm sure there was some embellishments and stuff in the article. But, I don't know. Just comes across as a bit like, yeah, journalist is pee pee poo poo. What if they're working together and this is all a big shill for a returning documentary? I mean, yeah, it's a possibility. Never rule anything out, okay? Anyway, that's it. That's all I've got to say on the matter. I'll trust a journalist over a fascist any day. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I know, like, obviously I just want to go, yeah, of course, obviously. But some journalists can, yeah, I don't know. You got, yeah, I do think, obviously, yeah, of course, journalist over a fascist. But like, I don't know. I'm trying to be fair and balanced. Okay, listen, I've got the fact checkers on my case now. All right, I got the fact checkers on my back. Clip chimping me. Well, yeah, boycott. That's it. Would you trust Andy No over Steph and Molly meme? I mean, that's like, oh god, what a terrible choice you're making me make there. I don't know. I don't think Andy No is really a journalist. Oh yeah, there was a clip of Hot Fuzz in something we watched the other day. Anyway, that's it. That's the end of that segment. Nothing more to say.